Now joining us with more on the PA's refusal to accept tax refunds from Israel is founder and executive director of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies, Dr. Martin Sherman. Dr. Sherman, as always, it is a pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Thank you again for the invitation.
All right, so let's get right down to it. Just to recap, Israel is withholding around $140 million in tax returns from the Palestinian Authority because that's about the amount of money that the PA spent last year in its pay-for-slay policy, paying salaries to terrorists and their families who were convicted of crimes against Israel civilians and soldiers. So I see this kind of going in one of a few different directions. Number one, the way Israel hopes, which is that the PA will, miraculously change its behavior in reaction to this withholding of funds after who knows how much time of damages. Or really the opposite effect is that Israel will, in the end up paying these tax monies anyway and will be back to square one. What do you think is more likely?
Well, sadly, I probably think that Israel will eventually capitulate. But in many ways, I think this shows the futility of trying to reach a consensual agreement with the Palestinians. Because when you think about it, basically the demands are absurd. After years of Israeli concessions and gestures of goodwill, we are now asked to finance our own killers. So, I think that we need to really rethink the way we conceptualize the conflict with the Palestinians. And I think the way we should conceptualize it is a clash between two inimical collectives who have irreconcilable and incompatible founding narratives. And there's no middle ground. One side must be victorious and the other side must be vanquished. And one would hope that the victorious side will be Israel, and I hope that the Israeli leadership begins to formulate policies.
Not even potentially with a change of guard, either in the Palestinian Authority or within Israel.
Like who? If you look at all the potential successes of Abbas, they're either from the Islamic movements. Recent polls have showed that Haniya would trounce Abbas in Haniya of Hamas. But even if you take from the Fatah, the only real candidate they have there is in jail, is Marwan Barghouti, who's in jail for multiple
There's also Mohammed Dakhlan, who is in exile currently.
Yes, but we really don't know how much pull he's got. The only one who I think can point to real authority in the public is Marwan Barghouti, who's, as I said, is a convicted multiple murderer.
So again, practically, what should Israel be doing? Because if this is really just kind of a political show and Israel's going to end up paying the price for it, why bother? Why not?
Precisely, why bother? I don't want to sound like old Al-Qaeda repeating myself over and over again, but I think it's time that Israel stops deluding itself and relates to the Palestinians the way that the Palestinians relate to themselves. In other words, they are an enemy collective, and they should be treated by an enemy collective. And I don't know any reason why you should sustain your enemy and provide them with water, electricity, postal services, fuel. And to avoid, as I've said before, to avoid the humanitarian crisis that such a policy may generate, you should offer all non-belligerent Palestinians generous relocation funds so they can find themselves a better and more secure life elsewhere. And interestingly, by the way, just recently, a up-to-date poll came out on what Israelis think of the ways to solve the Palestinian. The Palestinian state got 10%, and incentivized immigration got 30%, more than any other alternative. So even without any
but that's on the Israeli side. What are the polls saying from within the Palestinian Authority and within Gaza?
Well, but that shouldn't be an Israeli policy consideration, because what difference does it make?
Let's say it affects the efficacy of the plan.
Why? I mean,
because if we say, hey, this is a great plan, but they don't go for it, well, then it's not a very good plan.
Well, you know what? As I said, you need to set up a system of incentives for leaving and disincentives for staying. And if you slowly begin to withdraw services from your enemy collective, which I think is the moral thing to do, because otherwise you have Israeli citizens being murdered by them, and you withdraw services like water, electricity, postal services gradually, and on the other hand you give incentives for leaving. I think that there would be a great number of Palestinians who would grab at it. By the way, if you look at Gaza today, the only thing that is preventing a mass exodus of Gaza is the lack of money. And I'm saying Israel should supply that money to effect the mass exodus.
All right, well, on that note, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights.
Thank you.